All right, welcome everybody, and happy Monday to you all. Good to see you all. I'm going to just give it a moment here as I set the stage. A different cyber call. Many of you may be here for the first time, and if you are, welcome. The response over the post this weekend in support of Kemper Brown and Electronic Office for their MSP and their team in Ashville, North Carolina. And it doesn't take much to look at the news and know what's occurred there. So I just want to say that historically, the cyber call, Gary Pica with me here, we've been in our 5th season now, and you're seeing a lot more faces on today. Unusual times, unusual circumstances. So we're going to do an unusual cyber call. Typically, our sessions are cyber related, Gary, right? Either from the business, the governance, or sales side, or a topic at hand. It could be in the news, and obviously this is one in the news of disaster recovery at a whole different scale and different level. So what I did want to just simply say also is our format will be each of the folks up here after Gary asking Kemper a few of the questions. These are the people that really stepped up this weekend and donated, just so you guys know. And I'll put some URLs in about the LinkedIn post, which has closing in about 15,000 impressions. The GoFundMe in support of Kemper and Electronic Office and the families is closing in on $40,000 already. We hope to keep that going. So we're going to really appreciate everything everybody's done. And I'll also, after I say one or two more things, get an email out, because I typically send an email out saying, hey, it's starting in 5 minutes, but I didn't get a chance to do that. All right, so let me set the stage. So we're in hurricane country here in Tampa, Florida, and we have another one coming at us right now, Hurricane 5, Milton, that's due in a few days. But when I heard about Ashville, I knew Kemper, in fact, knew his dad back about 20 years ago, and remembered a VTN event I was at. VTN used to be a program for Ingram. And let me just let Tracy in. Bear with me, folks. Welcome, Tracy. And back in the day, it was 2005 or early 2006, there was a session on the MSPs that had just gone through Hurricane Katrina. And very, reminiscent of what kind of, I shouldn't say reminiscent, but the level of destruction, right, that Ashville just saw. And listening to these MSPs talk about the heroicism and things they did, how they kept their businesses and their people motivated. And I started to think, wow, I wonder what's going on with Kemper. And as I thought about what's going on with Kemper and everybody, an email comes through from Electronic Office, his company, basically saying, because I'm on their mailing list, hey, just basically, our hearts go out to everybody and we're here to help. So I reached out right away to Kemper and I said, what can we do? And I said, I'm going to, just go to work and see what we can do to help you, Kemper. And the channel has been amazing. So like I said, I'll put those URLs in there below. And with that, there's too many to list off, but in terms of sponsors that just, and MSPs that gave without even thinking about it. But on the stage here, Bitdefender, SonicWall, Ninja, Mesh, SonicWall, Huntress, SAS Alerts, etc. And so again, thank you all. And I'm going to put the links so you guys can see everything momentarily. So Gary, with that, I will hand it over to you.
Yeah, Kemper, why don't you just tell us a little about your story of what's happening there, like, what you're seeing, and whether you feel like I know as an MSP, you do some preparation for things like this, but what was your preparation relative to the scale of the devastation?
Sure, Gary. And thank you. Thanks everyone for being here, and thank you to Andrew. I'm just want to say that I've just been overwhelmed by the generosity and the support. It's really hard to put into words.
Kemper, let me just put in one thing I forgot. Can you introduce yourself? I skip one big thing here, Gary. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little about your MSPs?
Yeah. So first of all, I've got hurricane brain over here. My brain has been mush for about the last week. So my name is Kemper Brown. I'm the CEO of Electronic Office, and Electronic Office is the MSP that my father, who's also named Kemper, founded back in the early 80s in 1981. And so now I'm Gen 2 CEO, and we've got a little bit north of 80 clients, primarily in the Southeast, but certainly with a heavy concentration in Western North Carolina. And so, Gary, to answer your question, we prepared, but we didn't prepare enough. So I'll just kind of set the stage. We really got hit with a double whammy in that some of you guys who know California, you'll hear about these atmospheric rivers that bring in moisture, and for the 2 days before we got hit by Hurricane Helene, there was an atmospheric river that got stuck over the Appalachian Mountains and dumped what amounted to be a 1 in 1,000-year rain event. We actually received at the Ashville airport, I believe it was somewhere around 7.5 inches just in the 24 hours ahead of the hurricane arriving, which puts it in a 1 in 1,000-year rain event. And then we had this very, very fast-moving hurricane that came up from the Gulf and just slammed us. And because it moved so fast, it didn't have time to weaken, and so we got hit with obviously the additional rain, which we would expect, but also 60 to 80 mile an hour winds, and we had no shot. And so at that point, obviously you had the flood damage, but the wind damage, I think, is what really caught a lot of people who are in my community. What caught us by surprise, and it was interesting because, in terms of warning, we knew this was coming, but it was sort of a rain wind event. We have been hit by these before, but I guess about Thursday middle of the day, Thursday afternoon, so approximately 12 hours before the storm is when people started saying, "Uh-oh, this is, we've really got a problem." And there was just no time to prepare. Fortunately, our business, we're in the business continuity business. We're in the disaster recovery business. We had our disaster recovery plans, and they worked. I think they worked as well as they could. For us, the big shock in all of this was the being cut off from communications. Never in all of our simulations, we never imagined that we would be totally cut off from cell service. We would not be able to make cell phone calls. We would not be able to send text messages, and that was really what was the whammy for us from a business continuity perspective. And we can talk more about that, but I think that's one of the we haven't gotten a chance to do postmortems, but when we do, that will be at the top of the list. Is okay. We now realize that losing the ability to communicate via cell may be taken away from us. Just for instance, because of that, we weren't even able to reach every member of our team until Tuesday. So that's 4 or 5 days after the storm, just because there was no cell. We were totally cut off from the outside world. Most people who were on the outside knew more about what was going on than we did.
Gary, it's interesting, right? Because we always think these days about disaster from cyber. And the first thing, and we've talked about, Clark Harshbarger talks about this, is you can have an incident response plan. That's wonderful, but it's like the Mike Tyson getting punched in the face. At least have your call tree. But now all of a sudden, I can't call my call tree.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Do satellite phones work when everything else is down?
Who knows? We're gonna have
phones even work.
What I'll tell you, one of the more reliable forms of communication was ham radios. People were communicating via ham radios.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes you think about a whole different level. Like we only think about a disaster at a certain level. And what you're describing is some of the things we take for granted, right? And the big one being communications, every aspect of it out, right?
Garrett, quick question, if I may, to Michael Crean, who, obviously, from, the militaristic perspective. Michael, are there SATs that would work in this situation? Are there certain comms that we could, in hindsight, have said you should have had these things? Obviously, easy to play Monday morning quarterback.
Yeah, most of the time satellite phones will work in these type of situations, unless you're down in a valley behind a ridge and you don't have good line of sight. Sat phones will work. And there's a particular one that has lower orbit. They're called iridium phones. They tend to work really well.
Got it.
So Kemper, how did you, under this, like what were you actually able in terms of running your MSP under those conditions? What does that look like, if at all?
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm asking? Like,
I do.
What you describe, is your MSP able to function, employees, customers, in any scenario?
Yeah. So from our MSP perspective and what did work. So our operations center, I tell people we're a hardened building. Our building, actually, our operations center before we moved in used to be a meat packing facility. So we have these 1.5-foot concrete walls. It's quite the facility, and we're on backup generator. We have a backup generator, and we have redundant internet. We have a fiber line, and we have a 5G line. Interestingly enough, fortunately, so when the storm happened, we switched over to backup generator. That worked. That was great. But we actually didn't lose our fiber line until Tuesday. So at the building, we had power and we had connectivity. The problem was that we couldn't communicate with the people that weren't there. And so effectively, what that looked like was you communicate in the normal channels. We didn't have satellite phones, so we said, okay, we're just going to communicate how in the ways that we know how. Also, fortunately, we had members of our team that aren't in West North Carolina. And so we were able to communicate with them, and they were able to also be on call to be able to assist, just assist in the communication.
But
that was,
it makes me think of one thing, like, as our industry has matured, and since, especially since COVID, many MSPs have people, right, in multiple locations, countries,
right.
Where probably, I know when I ran both of my MSPs, pretty much everybody was in our region.
Yeah, right. Well, and so, areas where I count our blessings. If you're faced with a disaster, make sure you have a CIS admin out of harm's way. Just by fortune, one of our CIS admins had gone to Charlotte, which is about 2.5 hours away, and was outside of the hardest hit area. And so having him available just to assist and being on call was so helpful. I mean, we had, because this gets into the cybersecurity piece of it. So, for example, the way our systems work, obviously we want to prevent members of our team from connecting to unsafe Wi-Fi. Well, I had a member of my team who, and it's hard to talk about it. He had a tree fall through his house over his son's bedroom, had to be evacuated in the middle of the night. He was only able to bring his work laptop. He's in a hotel trying to get money from FEMA, and his laptop is blocking him from accessing it because he's on the open hotel Wi-Fi. And thank the good Lord that we were able to connect him with the CIS admin that was able to free up that connectivity. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to get that help. And so it's a little thing, and there were other reasons why it helped, but that story is one that I won't forget, because that's the personal nature of all this.
Yeah. So take us up to the current situation. We know that there's a lot going on. FEMA, many organizations, right? A lot of it is still even some rescue that's happening.
Yeah.
But talk about what's happening from a business infrastructure. Is any commerce happening? Like, what's the current status?
So, I mean, businesses are working to get back up, to get back up and working. I mean, these companies, they understand, like we do, that they have lives to continue to support, livelihoods to support. These businesses have to get up and working. So just to kind of set the stage, and I'll take a step back. When the storm occurred early Friday morning, September 27th. So at that point, we lost power, cell, internet for the most part, except we were one of the few, and water. So our main transmission line for Ashville was buried 25 feet deep. And because of the flooding and these creeks that became massive rivers, it totally wiped out these main transmission lines. So we lost water. Fast forward a week, power is slowly returning. In fact, my power came back on last night, which means, or yesterday afternoon, I'm sorry. So 9 days, we had a 9-day outage. Power is returning. Cell is returning, but it's not as strong as it used to be. You'll still be driving and hit random dead zones. But the water and internet is slowly returning, although slower than power. The water is currently the major crisis. It's very, very hard to reopen your business when you don't have water. So what we had to do, again, things that were not a part of our disaster recovery plan, is we had to get on the phone and order a couple porta potties, because not only do I have my team, but because we've had power and internet, we've actually had clients that have come into our space to do essential functions, make payroll, communicate with their team to make everybody safe, do invoicing so that they can keep the funds coming in for their business, so that they can then continue to pay their team. And so the commerce it's getting back on its feet. It's slow going, but really what is the most gut-wrenching for me is some of these areas, areas like Biltmore Village and Black Mountain, which are filled with, have these vibrant streets that have, shops and restaurants and things like that have totally just been wiped off the map. And so trying to get these businesses up and running is a task, but us in West North Carolina, we're a resilient bunch, and so we're just gonna try and get back on our feet. I think the hardest and I apologize, I'm just giving you kind of stream of conscious, but the other piece of this is that so many of these businesses, we're in the mountains. Businesses don't typically buy flood insurance. And so, you have these businesses that have been totally wiped away from these floods, and without the flood insurance, it's just creates such a burden on them.
Yep. I'm going to hand it over to Michael.
Well, Kemper, I'm wondering, so as hard as this has been, what role do you think your disaster recovery planning has played in getting your business back up and running? And maybe what are the one or two things that you've realized that you might have been missing in your disaster recovery plan before the hurricane hit?
Yeah. So I'm really proud of our team for how our plan worked. I mean, just in terms of what we had control over and what we planned for, the fact that our office never lost power and it never lost internet until the power company cut our fiber line trying to bring up power for the rest of the grid. But even then, we actually transitioned to Starlink, and fortunately, it was a shorter outage because they knew it had been cut. But in terms of the building, our building continuing to be operational, being a safe place that people could come work, a place where our clients could come. We set up a special network for our clients. So all they had to do was ring the front doorbell and it's like, come on in. We have a large conference room, and we just told people, be kind, share. Here's the network access, and do what you need to do. And so from all those things, I'm blown away by how well that worked. What didn't work, or where we have weaknesses, was the cell piece. Missing that communication. Requiring 4 days to make contact with our team to make sure that everybody was okay. So that's something that we'll have to certainly revisit. And but other than that, I couldn't be prouder of our team in terms of how we handled that piece.
And it's a beautiful thing when the team steps up, because it's easy to be there when there's no challenges, but when it really gets rough, you see the real character of people.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I've learned in all this is, when you're doing your planning, you're so focused on the business, and you're thinking about, okay, what do we need to do to get our business up? What do we need to do to get our clients' business up? And what we really had to slow down and think about was our team. I've got people who had significant damage to their homes, people whose family decided to leave town and they stayed. And so figuring out how do you balance your team's your team and your team's sanity with getting other businesses back up. We pretty much, it was wide open last week, and for the most part, we gave everybody we could the weekend off just to tend to their own homes and their own families, because that's important too. And I think that's been another piece of this that we've had to just sort of pause and remember that they're dealing with crises at home too, and we got to make sure that we're giving them the time and the space to deal with that.
Well, I had another question for you, but you already answered it. I was going to ask you if you could describe some of the challenges that your clients faced during, before and after the hurricane, and how did your team step up? But you've already told us, the things that you did and how you helped and gave them a place to go. And, you really helped your community out. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to Jim.
Jim, before you go, can I just say something real quick? So, Michael, just kind of apropos, I think a lot of people are familiar with Tim Kennedy, Green Beret like yourself. and there's a group called Save Our Allies that first was formed to go help overseas and extract people people out of Afghanistan when things were going haywire there, when we were getting out of but they do all these humanitarian efforts, and they were, Kemper, again, like you said, you didn't have a lot of communication, but they're in your area right now. And so I follow Tim Kennedy on Instagram, and like, I don't think people, they see pictures and stuff, Kemper, but they asked him, so what's it like? Right. And this is a guy that's seen, like Michael, pretty much the worst of the worst. And his description, his word was, it's apocalyptic. I mean, it's people like it's so I'm bringing that up now because you mentioned like, hey, I had to give some time off to my employees to go take care of their families and what might be left of their homes, but it's indescribable. Fair?
You're asking me, right, Andrew?
Of course. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so. I can't really put it into words. It's just nobody was spared. It is apocalyptical. I'm screwing that pronunciation up. And that's what one of my good friends is actually the mayor of a small town called Canton, North Carolina. You guys may have heard of it, or may have seen it as a dot on the map. But that was exactly his explanation for it. It's unlike anything that I really even have the words to describe. Just entire you just these small streams became these raging rivers that swept everywhere everything around it away. And it just totally marred the land. I mean, this is something that we'll deal with. It will be a part of our conscious forever. We'll deal with this forever. It is kind of like our Katrina. Some of y'all may know Jane Cage.
Yes.
She was a long time VTN TrustX member and still involved. She leads an affinity group for TrustX. And she's been a great resource because of what she dealt with in Joplin. And it really hit home to me because she told me, she said, Joplin, it was horrible, but it was a 5 mile wide, basically swath that was carved out. And if you went outside the 5 miles, things were fairly normal. And we don't have that luxury. You everywhere you look is trees leaning on trees or huge debris piles, water lines. It's excuse me. It's just absolutely devastating.
Thanks for just unpacking.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add just so my dad grew up in New Orleans. And so for our family, Katrina was a major event, and a lot of it does remind me when I guess December after Katrina, we went down there just to help out some family and do some of that kind of stuff, and it's reminiscent of that very much. Thank goodness we won't see the same loss of life and that kind of thing, but there are definitely some similarities to it.
Well, it's not just the memory that lasts, but so I'm in New Jersey. It's been 12 years since Sandy, and on the barrier islands, things are still being rebuilt. Like the actual physical, what's been left after over a decade. It's not like it gets put together in a couple years.
Yeah. So, Kemper, so sorry to deal with this.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, to go through this type of tragic event almost all over again, I feel for you, and I applaud you and your team for rising to the occasion like you have. I've often said that MSPs are the economy's first responders. Small businesses are the lifeblood of the economy in this country. And MSPs support those small businesses, right? Small businesses can't do what they do without technology today. So by extension, MSPs are the first responders of the economy, right? So if someone's watching this today and they haven't decided to donate even a small amount, please do so, because the effect is actually exponential. What you're doing right now for Kemper and his team is going to be, it's a ripple effect, right? Because now you're helping other businesses and by extension their families to keep the lights on and keep going. So that's just something to think about. I asked this question. I have two questions for you, Kemper. During all of this, right? Like, how do you balance managing your clients' IT crisis with ensuring the safety and well-being of your own employees during the disaster? Like, how do you manage that?
Can you hear him, Kemper?
Yeah.
I wonder if Kemper lost audio.
No, he's frozen.
Am I?
Oh, okay. All right. No, you're back. You're back.
Oh, hold on. Let's see. Am I back? Okay. It's we're taking all of these blips kind of. So I think I got Jim. I think I got most of your question. So hopefully I'll be able to answer it. For us, it had to start with our team. That was really where we started the communication, because we had to make sure that our team was okay. Mm-hmm. And our team was in place, and we had people in place that could help our clients. So for the when the storm was coming in, we sent a message. We stayed in communication with our clients and our team, but we told them, we said, hey, listen, we've got our severe weather operations plan. We're implementing. We're gonna stay going, but behind the scenes, okay, who do we have where set up to help us? We have a key team member remote for us, so making sure that she was in position to, being a dispatcher is a job, but making sure that isn't her day-to-day job, but making sure that she was positioned that we could switch all voice communication to her, so that somebody would be there Monday morning started to start being able to answer the phone for whatever phone. So we got our team straight, but then on the back end, we knew that when Monday morning, we wanted to be there to answer the phone, to answer requests to our clients that, hey, we're there, and we know that their first priority is going to be making sure that their team is safe. But hey, when you got your team is safe and you've stabilized those kind of things, we're here ready to climb in to help you get help you maintain your critical operations. And that's where our conference room came in to say, hey, listen, we literally had clients that had payroll due on Monday, and it's like, okay, come in. We've got power. We've got connection. Let's make sure that you can that you can make payroll so that you can continue support team. And so that's the way we approached it. And fortunately, we had on a Friday the whole weekend that most of all day Saturday and most of Sunday was communicate with the team. A lot of that was futile to make contact with some and just ensure as many people were okay as we could. Sunday night, I switched to, okay, let's send one communication out to clients, let them know we're here, let them know our, and then we'll work both fronts, hit the ground running on Monday morning. Does that kind of answer your question, Jim?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. In terms of, I mean, you mentioned
Am I still, is my audio
right? Obviously.
cutting out?
Yep, you're good. You're good. For the most part, you're good. So, Kemper, you mentioned critical operations, right? Part of any critical operation these days is access to data and data protection. So, how did your MSP ensure the critical data of your clients was being secured and backed up before the storm even hit? And did any of your clients have any data loss?
So I did not get that. I don't know if it's my connection or Jim's.
I'm guessing it's probably yours, but in terms of data protection, what are you doing for data backup and protection for your clients, and was there any data loss?
Yeah. So no data loss that we know of now. Fortunately, we're blessed there. Datto is we're big Datto partners. And so a lot of peace of mind there in terms of having that assistance. I don't have an exact count of the number of Datto clients. We've transitioned to basically not, their devices were no longer functional or no longer accessible, and so switching them to run on the Datto cloud, fully on the Datto cloud. So we've had some clients that we've moved to that, and that's worked pretty well. So from that standpoint, we consider ourselves very fortunate. We also we have a strong Azure presence, and so we have a lot of clients in Azure, and so obviously that's also aided in our ability to get our clients back up and running. Particularly, if we have 3 or 4 key people in a client that come and plug in here at our office, being able to pretty seamlessly connect them to their systems in Azure has been a godsend. So fortunately no data loss that we know of at this point. I'm not counting my chickens. That's where we are today. It was interesting that I got a call from it's a friend, and he runs a much smaller outfit, and he was asking me if I had any drive recovery connections, and that was a hard conversation because to think about organizations that haven't invested resources into having a strong data business continuity plan and data backup plan is that's a tough conversation to have.
Yeah, I can imagine that is really quite unfortunate, but also goes to how important it is to plan, right? So
yeah.
Before I hand it over to Tracy, I just want to thank you publicly, Andrew, for organizing this effort and getting the community rallied behind it. I think it's fantastic. So thank you for that. Kemper, keep up the great work. Tracy, over to you.
Tracy, I think you're on mute. 1 second.
I mostly live my life on mute. So Kemper, really pleased that we got asked to join in today. Jim, you've handed it off around the word community over to me, and I really feel like this is a huge opportunity for the MSP community to step up. So I'm going to echo what Jim said. If you haven't had a chance to engage in this effort, I would encourage you, whether you know Kemper or not, to step up, because you never know who is going to be the hardest hit in an incident like this. So Kemper, we've talked a lot about inclement weather policies. We've talked a lot about disaster recovery policies and incident response planning throughout this first half hour. But I'm curious, were there any unexpected cybersecurity threats that happened throughout the course of the hurricane that popped up out of nowhere? And if that happened, how did you deal with those?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and I'll try and go into some more detail on something I mentioned before. There were no threats that popped up. I mean, there are disasters like this are prime time for scammers, and we're totally seeing that. But that's more, I think those are really more targeting that we've seen are targeting individuals, which is just really sad. And there's a special place for people who feel like that's something that they want to do, be a part of. But for us, actually, we actually had to position ourselves to relax some of our security protocols. Protocols is not the right word. Safeguards. That's a much better word. Relax some of our security safeguards to allow people to work. We had situations where their cell phones were not functioning correctly, and in that case, or they lost their cell phone. We had one team member who lost his cell phone, and so we had to be able to relax the 2FA standard so that he could actually log on and work until he was able to reestablish that connection. And so that's why I said earlier that it was so critical for us that we had a member of our CIS admin team that was outside the affected area, so that he could jump on issues like that, just to support our own team to get us back up and running as quickly as possible. And nobody enjoys making the call to relax security safeguards or relax security. But when you're in a situation of operational versus not operational, you have to make those those hard decisions. And so that that's one thing that I would say, maybe we come back in 2 months and we once we have a time to do the postmortems and all that kind of stuff and lessons learned in all this, particularly just from an MSP perspective. But that's one of the early ones that thank goodness we had that kind of sysadmin access. I shudder to think where we would be if we weren't able to kind of make those accommodations to get our team back up and running quickly.
Okay, and I expect that as you go forward, you've got a plan to sort of maintain diligence over the threat monitoring to make sure that nothing slipped in. I think you're right. We are seeing a lot of that being directed to individuals versus the MSPs or corporations, but there is, I'm sure, a plan in place to continue to be super diligent, looking for opportunity to make sure you are still secure.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yes, 100%. We don't exactly know what that looks like yet, but yeah, we have to do that. We have to keep our guard up because we're at the front lines of those kind of vulnerabilities for our clients, and we also have to not only it's what we do day in, day out is we have to make sure that we're protecting ourselves to protect our clients, but we're also at the front lines of protecting our clients. And so that's the balance that we're constantly working with. But in a disaster situation like this, certain concessions have to be made, and you have to work through that, and you have to make calls on what is what you're able to do versus maybe what risks that you're not able to tolerate, and those kind of things, while also just maintaining diligence and high alert, because there's a lot of bad guys out there that are trying to take advantage of this situation, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Let's turn towards your team again, your people. At the core of every disaster, it is the humans that are going through and needing the assistance. So you've talked a lot about the ways that you were staying in touch with your team. You talked a lot about the way that you were opening up the space to the community, but leading through a situation like this, honestly, unless you are super highly caffeinated, I'm not even positive how you're still awake today. When you think about how you are keeping morale on the team together, how you are ensuring that your employees feel supported, this is a today question, but it's also into the future. I am feeling very grateful, all of you, to be Canadian today, where there are no natural disasters of any real sort. And this isn't a space I've ever had to give
Whoa! What did you just say? No natural
No
disasters.
major natural disasters. in
Careful.
Fires. We got them. We had them all the way down here.
Not in Toronto, Ontario. Like, you got to be honest with me. I am insulated. I'm in the third largest city in the world. There's not a lot of scary things happening where I am. And I ran a business once and I never really had to think about the people part of this. So as you go forward, where do you think the most important opportunities to make your staff feel supported lie? And, has that been built into your sort of incident response plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I'll say that Asheville, North Carolina, gained one of the reasons why it's a very desirable place to live is because there weren't any natural disasters. That was kind of part of our calling card. So be careful with that. This is not an area that is accustomed to events like this. Again, this was a 1 in 1,000 year event. So I hear that and I think, yeah, I remember saying the same things. But what's interesting is, one, long term makes me a lot more nervous than short term. I don't have the answers for the long term yet. Short term, it was interesting when I was working through things on Saturday and Sunday. I found my brain going back to how we responded during the early days of the pandemic, like that first week to 10 days in like March of 2020, when there was so much fear and uncertainty. And I actually, as I was kind of building my communication plan, I went back to some of those communications that I sent, and that was really, really helpful for me. And so I think using that's been a great template. I don't like the idea that, we had to go through COVID to prepare ourselves for this. But in some ways, that's the reality. Long term, I don't know. We have to stay positive. We have to keep people going. People want to know that it's going to be okay, and it is going to be okay. But there's a lot of work to be done. As Gary was saying, this is not something that is going to be cleaned up in months or even a couple of years. The effects of this are going to last a generation, if not more. And so we have to keep folks positive. We have to kind of count the blessings where we find them and keep it moving. I do worry that when we're not, as the news cycles shift and we fall out of the public eye, there's still gonna be people here that are hurting. There's still gonna be just tremendous amount of work to be done. Just cleanup work. I mean, there are people there's still people that haven't been able to stabilize their own personal situations, and that's really scary. How do you? We have team members. They're talking about that it may be 2025 before the water comes back to some people. How do you keep somebody focused and engaged in their work life when it's hard? They have to search to find a hot shower, or they can't figure out how they can do simple like household tasks like laundry. Or how do you do laundry when there's no water? So that's going to be a great challenge for us, and something that is I'm not quite there yet, but towards the end of this week, we're going to have to shift to that to figure that piece out. I'm just going to be honest. I don't have that answer yet.
Well, Kemper, make sure that when you get to that point, you reach out and ask the community part of that solution as well. I am more than happy to lean in on some opportunities that I might have to share some ideas around that. And with that, I'm going to pass things over to Brian.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Kemper, for jumping on and telling your story.
Yeah, grateful to be
Yeah,
here.
I have a couple of questions. The first one, probably a little bit early to fully know this, but how has this experience reshaped your approach to business continuity, say from a protocol standpoint, from a technology standpoint?
The biggest thing is, in situations like this, good communication is literally life or death. And when you're in situations where you have unreliable communication, or situations where you want to minimize necessary communication, and so I think we did a pretty good job, but I still think that we probably there are probably areas that we'll go back and revisit where we need to set things up in advance, so that if we do lose those lines of communication like we lost, that that we have plans and protocols in place so people still kind of know what to do. And another piece of it, it's related but not directly to your question, is I think that I'd never been in a situation where I literally felt like I was in survival mode. Not necessarily survival mode for not like that my life was ever in danger, but when we lost water, and we had been out of power for, at that point, I don't remember if it was 6 or 12 hours, all of a sudden you're just thinking about things like, okay, my wife and I, we have a toddler. And so like, we're like, okay, what do meals look like today? How are we going to make sure that we have water, things like that. And when you're so focused on those things, there are other simple, obvious things that you need to still be thinking about and doing, but you're not, you don't realize it. And I mean, it was amazing. It was a blessing. My brother lives in Charlotte, and on Sunday, so 2 days after the storm, he arranged a mutual friend of ours, and he basically sent up a bunch of water and this big, enormous Rubbermaid full of just stuff we needed. And I remember going through, and it's still emotional for me to talk about just what he were sending things that I needed, but I didn't know I needed. I was so focused on the bare essentials that there were things that he had sent me that were just made all the difference. And being in that scenario, I couldn't have called him and I had a little pocket radio with earbuds, but we didn't have one with a speaker, and he sent one with a speaker, but I didn't know enough to be able to actually say, hey, listen, do you have a radio with a speaker so we can keep, everybody can keep up with what's going on. So, and there are other examples. So that's the other thing that is, that sticks with me. That will stick with me. And I think that's something to learn when you're dealing with others that are in these scenarios, that sometimes, everybody wants to help, but sometimes you just say, hey, listen, I'm thinking clearly. Here are the things that you might need, here you go. Cause there's a good chance that they're going to get them and they're going to be like, oh my goodness, of course I need this. But I wasn't able to actually tell you that. I don't know if that resonates, or that makes sense in my still hurricane brain, but that's something that I find myself thinking about multiple times a day.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And that leads nicely into just asking about resiliency. I'm sure you've learned some valuable lessons from this experience, both individually, but as a team. Maybe tell us a bit about that.
I learned I didn't learn because I knew it, but it reinforced that I got a hell of a team. The old Mike Tyson adage that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Like, your plans are important. Your plans are a good starting point, but disasters, your plan always has to be adjusted. You just, disasters don't fall into nice little plans. And so you have to be able to pivot and adjust kind of on the fly. And so, you plan for everything you can, and then, where where you have to adjust, you adjust the best the best you can, and you just do the best you can with what you got at the time. And so, yeah, I mean, that's not to say I don't want to minimize disaster recovery plans, because without them, they're just essential. But to think that, it's going to go exactly like this, that doesn't happen.
Kemper, it's so funny you said that, because again, I said about Clark Harshberger, who we've had, who's the director of incident response for all of CrowdStrike. We've had him on the call, and he talks about the importance of tabletops and incident response plans. Gary, right? We've had him here, but that's where he talks about you can't predict. It's always going to be different, and he went through like things like the call tree and things that you're not going to sit there and look at your incident response plan per se. You're going to react to the situation. That's the part of rehearsal and practice and doing things. So
yeah, and one of the things that we did that had never ever come up in all of our discussions is there was a point where my COO and I were we were together, and we were hashing it out. I mean, it was we were really we just had different views of what we needed to do, and it got to the point where I said, okay, listen, you focus your concerns on the team. Make sure the team's getting what they need. If the team needs something, you need to come and tell me that. I'm going to focus on the clients and getting the clients what they need, and we'll just balance it together the best we can, the best we could. And that was incredibly helpful, to just, because you can't forget either one of them, but balancing those two, you really have to do both. And but again, that's another lesson for me is, everyone with disaster recovery, it's all about the business, but the human aspect, you got to remember the human aspect, because they're dealing with they're suffering too. They're not robots.
So we're coming up to the last few minutes here.
Yeah.
So ZB, if you could ask one last question, if you don't mind, bud. And sorry we didn't get through all of them.
I'm sorry, I'm long-winded, and you asked one more question. I have one more thing that I just want to kind of say.
You don't have to apologize, because again, we don't understand and can't comprehend what you're dealing with. No one out here can, and you have all the grace in the world. So go ahead, CB. Why don't you rip?
Yeah, I want to say thank you, Kemper, for joining and sharing. I'm seeing the chat light up on the conversation, the topics you've hit on, and it's a lot of valuable experience. So first of all, thank you, and thank you for letting us be a part of the community. Andrew, to contribute as well. And my question was more structured towards your leadership outlook, but you kind of hit on it as far as like dividing the time between you and your COO. Like, what impact has this done to your outlook on leadership and crisis management?
I don't know yet. I honestly, I don't. I think I'd love to come back maybe in 2 months and talk about that. We've been, because it's been hour by hour and day by day, and so we're just kind of trying to keep things going. I haven't even thought about that. So I'm sorry, that's not a good answer.
Yeah, that's okay. And I think
That's a
you're
fair
a
answer.
very popular guy at different events, because that's a wealth of knowledge you have. So thank you for sharing. Sorry that you had to go through it, but thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So all right. So 2:00, we'll wrap it up here. I know you want to say something, Kemper. I just want to say this. I can't thank everybody enough for supporting this effort. Kemper, we're over $42,000. And I know there's still more to come.
Overwhelming.
And I know you'll be an amazing steward of it. and for putting it in the right places, the right families, the right efforts. But the floor is yours as you close us out.
Yeah, thank you. It's the whole thing is just it's overwhelming. I don't have the right words to express my gratitude, and the generosity is just it's just incredible and shows how special the community is. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to say what our plan is that we have families and individuals on our team who we know that, you know, insurance and FEMA money is not going to be enough, and so that's what we want to use this for, is to for, you know, first thing is to fill those gaps for those team members of ours, to help them you know, get back on their feet, and then past that, there's some organizations here on the ground that are doing some amazing work, and so we'll be definitely 100% want to be good stewards of these precious dollars, because it's amazing. I never thought that I would be a part of a GoFundMe, and I never imagined that something like this would come through. It just means so much, and yeah, I'm just overwhelmed by that. And Andrew, one other just like housekeeping note. I see the chat. I haven't really been able to focus on it or read it. I don't know if it's possible to get some sort of printout or something. I'd love to, or maybe a recording of this. I'd love to just to see that and make sure that I kind of absorb those thoughts.
Yeah, I'll absolutely send you the recording. Gary, any closing thoughts as you think about this with 3 decades of experience in this industry and probably seeing, you know, every facet of it? And Jim, I know you as well, but Gary, I don't know, as a co-host, just let you close it out for us.
Yeah, no, I guess my thought on it is I don't know that we're always possible to be prepared.
Yeah.
Everything, but each time we take away some lessons. And Kemper, you know, described, if people listen to this back, a lot of small things, right? Both personally and through the business, that he listed, you know, in the course of conversation, of little things that we could do. And so I'm going to go back and listen again and make a note of some of those.
Awesome.
Well, and I think it would be really fun just to put a placeholder at some point in 2 to 3 months to come back once we've actually had time to really fully absorb the whole event, to say, okay, here's what we learned, here's how we can help the community, to kind of pay back the generosity, to say, okay, here's what we learned going through this, here's some things that maybe other partners can learn, other community members can learn to bolster their business continuity plans and things like that.
That'd be fascinating. The invite's open whenever you're ready. So Tracy, thank you, Brian, Jonathan, Gary, Jim, ZB, and Michael Crean, who had to jump off, and everybody that has donated. Again, thank you for your incredible generosity and help. And wow, Greg Starr, awesome to see you. It's been a long time, and I know you know Kemper Senior from BTN, so you got Greg Starr out here, by the way, Kemper. So
oh man,
yeah,
hey Greg, Greg's a great friend.
Yep, he sure is. So everybody, see you next Monday. I hope we've made it strong through Hurricane Milton, and God bless everybody. We'll see you soon. Take care.